My name is Sabrina, and I'm 32 years old. I built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch after my father refused to pay for my college tuition. His reason I would be competition for my half-brother Jake, his golden child. That moment of rejection could have broken me, but instead, it became the foundation of my success. Sometimes, the people who should believe in you the most are the ones who believe in you the least. Before I share my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you've ever been underestimated by family, hit that like and subscribe button. Now let me tell you how being seen as competition became my greatest motivation. I was 6 years old when my parents divorced. I remember the day clearly, sitting on our front porch with my stuffed rabbit clutched to my chest, watching my father load suitcases into his car. He knelt down, promised he'd always be there for me, and said that just because he and Mom weren't going to live together anymore didn't mean he would stop being my dad. I believed him. Children always do. My father remarried within a year. His new wife Diane came from money. Old money, the kind that's been in families for generations. Their wedding was featured in local society pages. My mother and I weren't invited. Mom said it was an oversight, but even at 7 years old, I knew better. 2 years after the wedding, my half-brother Jake was born. I remember visiting the hospital, standing on tiptoe to peek into the nursery window. My father had his arm around Diane, both of them gazing adoringly at their new baby. I stood slightly apart, invisible, until my father finally remembered I was there and half-heartedly lifted me up for a better view. "That's your brother," he said. "You're going to love him." And I did. Jake was a sweet baby who grew into a sweet little boy. He wasn't the problem. The problem was how differently we were treated. My life became divided between two worlds. Most of the time, I lived with my mom in our modest 2-bedroom apartment near the community college where she taught part-time while also working as a waitress to make ends meet. Mom did everything she could to give me a good life, but money was always tight. New clothes came from discount stores, vacations were camping trips to state parks, and special occasions meant dinner at Olive Garden instead of our usual home-cooked meals. Then every other weekend, I would visit my father's world. He lived in a sprawling house in an exclusive neighborhood with manicured lawns and a community pool. Diane didn't work. She volunteered on charity boards and hosted garden parties. Their house had 5 bedrooms, a game room, and a backyard, with a built-in barbecue that cost more than my mother's car. The contrast between the two homes was stark, but not as stark as the difference in how Jake and I were treated. Jake had everything: the latest toys, designer clothes, swimming lessons, piano lessons, soccer coaching. His bedroom looked like it belonged in a magazine with custom furniture and a mural of a space scene painted across one wall. My bedroom, at their house, was a guest room that never quite felt like mine, with generic decor and empty drawers that reminded me I was just passing through. Birthdays highlighted the disparity most painfully. Jake's parties were elaborate affairs with professional entertainment, customized cakes, and gift bags that cost more than the presents my friends could afford to give me. One year, they rented out an entire children's museum for his party. That same year, my father forgot my birthday entirely, until my mother called to remind him. He sent a gift card 3 days late with a hastily scrawled note. Diane was never outright cruel to me. That would have been easier to deal with in some ways. Instead, she specialized in subtle exclusion. "Oh, Sabrina, I didn't think you'd be interested in coming to the symphony with us." Or, "Those ballet tickets are so expensive and you've never shown much interest in dance." She'd plan family photos when I wasn't scheduled to visit book vacation homes with exactly enough beds for the 3 of them, and talk about family traditions that had started after I was no longer living with my father. As I grew older, I realized that no matter what I did, I would never truly be part of their family unit. But still, I tried. I threw myself into academics thinking that if I couldn't win my father's love through simply being his daughter, perhaps I could earn his respect through achievement. In high school, I excelled. I was valedictorian captain of the debate team and scored a perfect 1600 on my SATs. Each report card, each award, each recognition became a hopeful offering on the altar of my father's attention. Sometimes it worked. He would tell his friends about my accomplishments with a proud smile that would sustain me for weeks. But those moments were fleeting, always followed by a return to the status quo where Jake was the sun and I was a distant planet, lucky to catch occasional warmth from his rays. Despite everything, I held on to hope. As college approached, I dared to believe that my father would finally recognize my worth. After all, he had always valued education and professional success. Surely he would support my academic future, even if he had failed me emotionally. I was wrong. My senior year of high school was a time of excitement and anticipation. College acceptance letters started arriving, each one a validation of my hard work. I applied to 12 schools and was accepted to 11, including Stanford, my dream school. The day that thick envelope arrived, I called my father immediately. "Dad, I got into Stanford," I practically shouted into the phone. "That's nice, sweetheart," he replied, sounding distracted. "Jake just scored the winning goal in his soccer game. We're taking him out for ice cream to celebrate. I'll call you back later." He didn't call back, but I pushed aside my disappointment. This news was too big to be diminished by his typical behavior. Besides, he had mentioned several times over the years that he would help with my college expenses. Nothing specific, no promises about amounts or percentages, but enough that I had factored his assistance into my plans. The following weekend, I went to his house for dinner, acceptance letter in hand. I had strategically waited until after the meal when everyone was relaxed and in good spirits. Jake had been excused to play video games, and the adults were enjoying coffee at the dining table. "I wanted to talk to you about college," I began, my heart pounding. "I've been accepted to several great schools, including Stanford." I slid the letter across the table. My father glanced at it, nodded, but didn't pick it up. "Congratulations." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for more. When nothing came, I continued. "I wanted to discuss financial arrangements. Stanford is expensive, and while I've received a partial scholarship and I can contribute from my savings and work study, I'll need help with tuition." A strange expression crossed my father's face. He exchanged a look with Diane before clearing his throat. "Sabrina, I think you may have misunderstood. I'm not in a position to pay for your college education." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "But you've always said you'd help. You paid for your own education. You know how important it is." "Yes, and it is important," he agreed. "But we have to think about Jake, too. He'll be applying to colleges in 8 years, and we need to make sure we have enough saved for him." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "Jake is 10. You're saying you can't help me now because of something that's going to happen 8 years from now?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Ivy League schools are getting more competitive every year. Jake will need every advantage. If you went to Stanford now, you'd be competition for Jake when it's his turn." The words hit me like a physical blow. Competition. That's how he saw me. Not as his daughter deserving of the same opportunities as his son, but as an obstacle to Jake's future success. Diane reached over and patted my hand. "There are plenty of other options, Sabrina. Community college is very affordable, and you could always transfer later, or take out loans like many students do." I looked at her perfectly manicured nails resting on my skin and fought the urge to pull away. Behind her sympathetic smile, I could see satisfaction. This wasn't a financial decision. It was the culmination of years of ensuring that Jake's needs always came before mine. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "So you won't help me because I might take a spot that Jake might want in 8 years. "You're twisting my words," my father protested, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "It's not just about that. College is expensive and we need to prioritize." "And I'm not a priority," I finished for him. The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. The drive home with my mother that night was quiet. I stared out the window, tears streaming down my face. Mom was gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. I knew she was angry, not at me, but at her inability to give me what I deserved. She had already taken on extra shifts to help with my college expenses, but there was no way she could cover Stanford tuition on her teacher's salary. "We'll figure something out," she finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "You deserve Stanford, and we'll find a way." But as the days passed, reality set in. Without significant financial help, Stanford was simply not possible. The partial scholarship I'd received, combined with the maximum student loans and my savings from part-time jobs throughout high school, still left an insurmountable gap. I declined my dream school offer. Then I declined the others that were equally out of reach financially. Each email I sent felt like cutting off a piece of my future, each confirmation of my decision, another door closing. In the end, I accepted admission to the state university where my mother taught, which offered me a tuition discount as a faculty dependent. It was a good school, but it wasn't Stanford. It wasn't what I had earned. When I told my father my decision, he seemed relieved. "That's very practical, Sabrina. I'm proud of you for being sensible." Sensible? As if choosing the only option left to me after he had eliminated all others was something to be proud of. As if being denied the future I had worked for was a life lesson in practicality. That was the moment I stopped seeking his approval. I was done being the good daughter who understood and forgave and tried harder. I was done competing for scraps of attention from a man who had made it clear I would always come second. But I wasn't done competing altogether. If anything, I was just getting started. The next few years were among the hardest of my life. I worked 3 part-time jobs while taking a full course load at the state university. I was a teaching assistant for freshman composition classes, a barista at the campus coffee shop, and a weekend receptionist at a local salon. Between work and classes, I averaged 4 hours of sleep per night. My meals consisted mainly of whatever I could grab for free from the coffee shop at the end of my shift. The physical exhaustion was difficult, but the emotional toll was worse. I had always defined myself by my academic achievements, and now I was watching that identity slip away. My grades suffered as I struggled to balance work and school. For the first time in my life, I received B's and even a C in an advanced statistics class. Each less-than-perfect grade felt like confirmation of what my father had implied, that I wasn't special enough to deserve support, that my dreams were expendable. Depression crept in slowly then, all at once. I started skipping classes, something I had never done before. I withdrew from friends and spent my rare free time sleeping or staring blankly at television shows I wasn't really watching. My mother noticed, of course, and tried to help, but she was fighting her own battles. Working overtime, dealing with health issues she downplayed, but couldn't hide completely, and carrying the guilt of not being able to give me the opportunities she felt I deserved. The turning point came during my sophomore year in an Introduction to Entrepreneurship class I had registered for on a whim. The professor, Dr. Martinez, was unlike any teacher I'd had before. A former tech executive who had started 3 successful companies before turning to academia. She taught not from textbooks, but from experience. She spoke about business with a passion that reminded me of how I used to feel about learning before exhaustion and disappointment had dulled my enthusiasm. One day after class, she asked me to stay behind. "You have a good mind for business," she said without preamble. "Your analysis of the case study last week showed insights none of the other students caught. But you're not engaged. You turn in assignments late, you don't participate unless called on. What's going on?" Something about her directness broke through my carefully constructed walls. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. My father's rejection, my financial struggles, my fading dreams. I expected sympathy, or perhaps gentle encouragement. What I got was a challenge. There's a startup weekend event happening next month, she said when I finished. Teams compete to develop business ideas and present them to venture capitalists. The winning team gets seed funding. I think you should enter. I laughed without humor. I can barely keep up with my coursework. I don't have time for extracurricular competitions. Make time, she replied simply. You're burning yourself out for a degree you're not even passionate about anymore. What if there's another path? At first, I dismissed the idea, but Dr. Martinez was persistent. She mentioned the competition in every class, sent me articles about successful startups that had begun at similar events, and once even, accidentally, left the registration form on my desk. Finally, more to stop her campaign than out of any real hope, I agreed to participate. The weekend of the competition, I arrived sleep-deprived and skeptical. Teams were forming around the room, friends and classmates clustering together. I stood awkwardly alone until a group of 3 engineering students invited me to join them. They had technical skills but needed help with the business aspects of their idea, an app to help college students find affordable textbooks. As we worked together over the next 48 hours, something unexpected happened. I came alive. All the frustration and resentment that had been simmering inside me found a productive outlet. I threw myself into market research, financial projections, and competitive analysis. I drew on my own experiences as a cash-strapped student to identify pain points and solutions. When it came time to pitch, I surprised myself by volunteering to present. Standing in front of the judges, I spoke with a confidence I hadn't felt in years. I outlined our vision for democratizing education by making textbooks accessible to all students regardless of financial background. I shared statistics on textbook price inflation and student debt. And I concluded with a personal touch, admitting that this wasn't just a business idea for me. It was a mission born from my own struggles. We won. Not just the competition, but a $50,000 seed investment from one of the venture capitalist judges who approached us afterward. You have fire, he told me. That's something I can't teach founders, and it's what I look for before anything else. That night, I called my mother with the news. She cried happy tears, telling me how proud she was. I didn't call my father. This victory was mine, and I didn't need or want his validation anymore. Over the next few months, our textbook marketplace app went from concept to reality. I reduced my course load to part-time and quit 2 of my 3 jobs to focus on the startup. Dr. Martinez became our informal advisor, connecting us with resources and mentors from her network. The engineering students, now my co-founders, handled the technical development while I managed business operations and marketing. By the end of junior year, we had a working product with growing user adoption across 3 campuses. We were generating modest revenue and had attracted interest from additional investors. And I was faced with a decision: continue dividing my attention between school and the company, or go all in on entrepreneurship. It wasn't an easy choice. Despite everything, I still valued education. The idea of dropping out went against everything I had believed about myself and my future. But as Dr. Martinez pointed out, I wasn't abandoning education. I was pursuing it in a different form, learning through experience rather than textbooks. When I finally made the decision to leave university, it felt less like giving up and more like choosing a different path. One that I had forged myself without anyone's permission or approval. One where my success or failure would be entirely my own responsibility. The early days of full-time entrepreneurship were both exhilarating and terrifying. We moved into a tiny office space, really just a converted storage room in an aging building on the edge of campus. We worked 16-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and cheaper ramen. We celebrated small victories. Our first 1,000 users, our first month of 5-figure revenue, and weathered setbacks together. Friends thought I was crazy. Relatives questioned my decision. Everyone except my mother and Doctor Martinez seemed to be waiting for me to fail to admit I had made a mistake and return to the traditional path. Even my co-founders sometimes doubted our chances of success in an industry dominated by established publishers and retail giants. But for the first time since my father had denied me Stanford, I felt truly in control of my destiny. And that feeling was worth all the uncertainty, all the sleepless nights, all the ramen dinners. I was building something of my own, something that couldn't be taken away from me. Something that wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or support. And slowly, steadily, that something began to grow. 2 years after dropping out of college, I stood in our new office space, a real office with windows and proper desks, not a converted storage room, and marveled at how far we had come. Our textbook marketplace had evolved into a comprehensive educational resources platform, connecting students not just with affordable books, but also with tutoring services, study materials, and scholarship opportunities. We had expanded to 27 campuses across the country and were adding more each semester. We had 15 employees now, a proper website, and business cards that didn't look like we had printed them at the campus library. Most significantly, we had just closed our first major round of venture capital funding. $7 million to fuel our expansion plans. The validation came not just in the form of investor confidence, but also in industry recognition. When a prominent business magazine included me in their annual 30 Under 30 list of promising young entrepreneurs featuring a full-page photo and interview, I felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with seeking anyone's approval. This was success on my own terms. Then my father called. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. Our contact had dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional text message. I had seen him briefly at my grandmother's funeral 6 months earlier, but we had exchanged only the most basic pleasantries before gravitating to opposite sides of the room. "Sabrina," he said, when I answered, his voice warm and proud, as if we spoke every day. "I just saw the magazine article. Congratulations, I always knew you had potential." The familiar anger flared, but it was duller now, more distant. Success is its own form of healing. "Thank you," I replied neutrally. "We should catch up. How about lunch next week? My treat, of course." I hesitated, then agreed. Curiosity more than anything else made me say yes. I wanted to see what he would say, how he would act, now that I had achieved something noteworthy without his help. We met at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place he would have taken business associates to impress them. He arrived before me and stood when I approached the table, giving me an awkward half-hug. He looked older than I remembered, with more gray in his hair and new lines around his eyes. "You look wonderful," he said as we sat down. "Success suits you." The conversation that followed was surreal. He asked questions about my company, nodding with apparent interest, as I explained our business model and growth strategy. He mentioned names of prominent investors and tech entrepreneurs, implying connections and knowledge he didn't actually possess. And he repeatedly used phrases like, "I always told you," and, as I predicted, when discussing my achievements, as if he had been my champion all along. I let him talk, sipping my water and offering minimal responses. I was curious to see where this performance was leading. Finally, after the waiter had cleared our plates, he leaned forward with a conspiratorial smile. "So, Jake is a junior in high school now. Starting to think about colleges." Ah, there it was. "He's a bright kid, but academics aren't his strong suit. Not like you." He gave a small laugh. "His counselor thinks he needs to find ways to stand out on his applications. Extracurricular activities, community service, that sort of thing. But what would really help is an internship at a successful tech company, something that would look impressive to admissions officers." I set down my glass carefully. "Are you asking me to give Jake an internship?" "Well, it would be good for both of you. He could learn from you and you could help guide him. Family helping family." He smiled as if this were the most natural suggestion in the world. The same way you helped me with college, I asked, keeping my voice level. His smile faltered. Sabrina, that was a difficult time financially. I explained that. Did you? Because what I remember is being told that I couldn't go to Stanford because I might be competition for Jake when it was his turn to apply. My father had the grace to look uncomfortable. I may have expressed myself poorly. What I meant was, I know exactly what you meant, I interrupted. And now you're asking me to use my connections I built without any help from you, to give Jake an advantage. The same Jake you prioritized over me at every turn. This isn't about the past, he protested. Jake is struggling. His grades aren't great. Diane is worried sick, and frankly, I'm concerned too. He needs this. I studied my father's face, seeing the genuine worry there. For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Not for my father, but for Jake. I knew what it was like to live under the weight of parental expectations, to be valued conditionally rather than loved unconditionally. I'll meet with Jake, I said finally. Just Jake, not you or Diane. If he's genuinely interested in what we do, we can discuss possibilities, but I won't guarantee anything. Relief washed over my father's face. That's all I'm asking. Thank you, Sabrina. As we parted ways outside the restaurant, he attempted another awkward hug. I'm proud of you, he said. I always knew you would do great things. The words I had longed to hear for so many years now rang hollow. I nodded politely and walked away, not looking back to see if he watched me go. I arranged to meet Jake at a coffee shop near his high school the following week. I arrived early, half expecting him not to show up at all. But precisely at 4 o'clock, he walked through the door. At 18, Jake looked like a younger version of our father, with the same strong jawline and dark hair. But his demeanor was different, hesitant, almost shy, where our father was always confident to the point of arrogance. He spotted me and approached the table uncertainly. Hi, Sabrina, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Thanks for meeting me. Of course, I replied, studying him. We were technically siblings, but we were practically strangers. When was the last time we had a real conversation? Had we ever? After ordering drinks, we sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Jake surprised me. I'm sorry about Dad, he said abruptly. About how he treats you. It's not fair. I blinked, taken aback by his directness. Did he tell you to say that? Jake shook his head. He doesn't even know I know. Mom tries to hide it, but I've seen how they shut you out. It's been happening my whole life. He traced a pattern on the table with his finger, not meeting my eyes. I used to think it was normal that all families were like that. Then I got older and realized it's not. It's messed up. The simple acknowledgement loosened something in my chest. For years, I had wondered if I was overreacting, if the favoritism I perceived was partly in my imagination. Hearing Jake confirm it was both painful and validating. Dad says you need an internship, I said, changing the subject. Something impressive for college applications. Jake grimaced. That's what he wants. He's got this whole plan. I'll go to an Ivy League school, get a business degree, then join his company or some big finance firm. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. But that's not what I want. What do you want? I asked, genuinely curious. Music, he said, a flash of passion crossing his face. I play guitar, write songs. I'm in a band. We're actually pretty good. We won a regional competition last year. I didn't know you were musical. Why would you? It's not like we've had a chance to know each other. There was no accusation in his tone, just a simple statement of fact. Dad and Mom don't take it seriously. They call it a hobby, something to outgrow before college. They won't even come to my shows. I could hear the hurt behind his matter-of-fact words, and it resonated with my own experiences. Different circumstances, same pain. The sting of parental dismissal. Dad wants me to ask you for an internship, Jake continued. He thinks it will impress admissions officers at the schools he wants me to apply to. But I don't want to use you like that. I appreciate that, I said quietly. The thing is, Jake hesitated. I do want to get to know you, not because you're successful or because you can help my college applications, but because you're my sister, and I've missed out on having you in my life. That's Dad and Mom's fault, not yours or mine. But maybe we can change that now. His honesty was disarming. I had come to this meeting prepared to be polite but distant, to make it clear that I wouldn't be manipulated by my father using Jake as a pawn. I hadn't expected Jake himself to reject that game. Did you know Dad refused to pay for my college? I asked suddenly. Even though he could afford it, even though I got into Stanford, he said it was because I might be competition for you. Jake's eyes widened. What? No, I never knew that. That's horrible. He looked genuinely shocked and dismayed. I'm so sorry, Sabrina. I had no idea. It's not your fault, I said automatically. But it happened because of me, or at least using me as an excuse. Jake ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like our father's that it gave me a strange pang. No wonder you've been distant. I would hate me too. I don't hate you, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I barely know you, and from what I can tell so far, you're nothing like our father. That's the best compliment you could give me, Jake said with a rueful smile. We talked for nearly 3 hours, gradually moving from careful politeness to genuine connection. Jake told me about his music, his dreams of attending a conservatory instead of a business school, his quiet acts of rebellion against our father's expectations. I shared stories of building my company, the challenges and triumphs, the freedom I had found in charting my own course. As evening approached, Jake looked at his watch reluctantly. I should go. I told Dad I'd be home for dinner. Will you tell him about our conversation? I asked. Jake considered for a moment. Not all of it. I'll tell him we talked about a potential internship. That will keep him off my back for a while. He hesitated. But I'd like to see you again. Maybe you could come to one of my band's shows. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. As we said goodbye, Jake surprised me with a quick, awkward hug. Thanks for not holding Dad's behavior against me, he said, and for giving me a chance. I watched him walk away, feeling oddly hopeful. The meeting had not gone at all as I expected, but perhaps that was a good thing. Perhaps there was a chance to build a relationship with my brother, separate from the toxic dynamic with our father. What I didn't expect was that our newfound connection would lead to a confrontation that had been brewing for 18 years. 2 weeks later, my father called to invite me to dinner at his house. Just family, he said. It would mean a lot to Jake. I agreed both for Jake's sake and out of curiosity about how my father would frame our meeting. Had Jake maintained the fiction that we had discussed an internship, or had he been honest about our conversation? The answer became clear as soon as I arrived. My father greeted me with a hearty handshake, as if we were business associates rather than father and daughter. Jake's been talking nonstop about your company, he said. He's very impressed with what you've built. Diane's welcome was cooler, but still polite. She had aged well, her blonde hair now highlighted to disguise the gray her slim figure maintained through rigorous exercise and careful diet. We're so glad you could join us, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Jake caught my eye and gave a subtle eye roll behind their backs. So he was playing along with their narrative. Interesting. Dinner was surreal. My father dominated the conversation, talking about Jake's college prospects as if they were settled fact rather than his own agenda. Princeton has an excellent business program, he was saying as we started on the main course. Legacy admissions are still a factor even if they don't advertise it. My father went there, you know. Jake pushed his food around his plate, saying nothing. Diane nodded at appropriate intervals, occasionally adding comments about friends' children who had attended prestigious universities and gone on to successful careers in finance or law. I watched this performance with a detached fascination. How strange to be sitting at this table again, witness to the same dynamics that had shaped my childhood, yet now viewing them from the outside rather than as a participant. Of course, an internship at a successful startup would really stand out on applications. My father continued glancing meaningfully in my direction, especially with a personal recommendation from the founder. Before I could respond, Jake set down his fork with a sharp clink against the plate. "I'm not applying to Princeton," he said quietly. My father paused mid-sentence. "What? Or any Ivy League school? Or any business program?" Jake's voice was steady, though I could see his hand trembling slightly. "I'm applying to Berklee College of Music, and Juilliard, and a few other music schools." The silence that followed was absolute. Diane's fork remained suspended halfway to her mouth. My father stared at Jake as if he had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. "That's not funny, Jake," he finally said, his voice tight. "It's not a joke," Jake replied. "I want to study music. It's what I'm good at. It's what I love. I've already started the applications." "This is absurd," my father said, his face darkening. "You can't build a future on playing guitar in some garage band. Music is a hobby, not a career path." "It's not a hobby to me," Jake insisted. "And we're not just a garage band. We've won competitions, played real venues. My guitar teacher says I have genuine talent." "Your guitar teacher?" my father scoffed. "A man who gives $30 lessons and drives a 10-year-old car. That's who you're taking career advice from." Jake flinched but held his ground. "At least he respects what I want. At least he sees me for who I am, not who he wants me to be." My father's gaze swung to me. "Did you put these ideas in his head? Is this your way of getting back at me?" Before I could respond, Jake interrupted. "Sabrina has nothing to do with this. I've wanted to study music for years. I just never had the courage to tell you." "There's a difference between courage and foolishness," my father snapped. "This is your future we're talking about. I won't let you throw it away on some adolescent fantasy." "Like you wouldn't help Sabrina with Stanford?" Jake asked. Another charged silence fell over the table. My father's face paled, then flushed. "That was different," he said stiffly. "The circumstances were completely different." "How?" Jake pressed. "You could afford it then, just like you can afford to send me to music school now. The only difference is that you approved of her choice, but not mine." "That is not what happened," my father insisted, turning to me. "Sabrina, tell him the truth. We had financial considerations. There were factors he doesn't understand." I met my father's pleading gaze calmly. "You told me I couldn't go to Stanford because I would be competition for Jake when it was his turn to apply. Those were your exact words." Diane made a small, distressed sound. "Richard, you didn't say that." "I didn't mean it that way," my father protested. "It was a complicated time. There were many factors to consider." "It's not complicated at all," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "You chose your son over your daughter. You decided his potential future was more important than my actual present. And now you're upset because he doesn't want the future you sacrificed my education to protect." My father pushed back from the table. This isn't about you, Sabrina. This is about Jake making a serious mistake that will affect the rest of his life. No, Jake said, standing up as well. This is about you trying to control both of us. You didn't support Sabrina when she needed you, and now you won't support me either. Not unless we do exactly what you want. That's not fair, Diane interjected. Your father has always wanted what's best for both of you. What he thinks is best, I corrected. Not what we want or need. There's a difference. My father turned to Jake, ignoring me completely. You will not apply to music schools. End of discussion. We've invested too much in your education to watch you throw it away on a pipe dream. I'm 18, Jake replied. You can't stop me from applying, and if you won't pay for it, I'll find another way. Sabrina did. At the mention of my name, my father rounded on me again. This is your doing. You've poisoned him against me, filled his head with rebellious ideas. I shook my head. Jake and I barely know each other because of how you and Diane have kept us apart our entire lives. We met for coffee 2 weeks ago. That's not enough time to poison anyone. This is about Jake making his own choices just like I made mine. And look how well that turned out, my father said sarcastically. You dropped out of college to run some little website. I laughed, then genuinely amused by his deliberate minimization of my success. That little website is now valued at over $20 million. I employ 30 people. I'm financially independent at 29. And I did it all without your help or approval. You got lucky, he dismissed. The tech bubble will burst, and then where will you be without even a college degree to fall back on? I'll be fine, I assured him, because I built my success on my own terms doing something I believe in. That's what I want for Jake, too. The chance to pursue his passion, to succeed or fail, based on his own efforts, not to live the life you've planned for him. Jake moved to stand beside me, a symbolic gesture that wasn't lost on anyone at the table. I'm going to apply to music schools, he said firmly, with or without your blessing. And if you won't pay for it, I'll find scholarships, take out loans, work my way through school. Like Sabrina did. My father looked from Jake to me and back again, as if seeing us both clearly for the first time. So that's it, both of my children turning against me, after everything I've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? I asked quietly. You've given Jake everything, except the freedom to choose his own path. And you've given me nothing, not even your support when I needed it most. That's not true, he protested, but his voice lacked conviction. It is true, I said. But here's the thing. I'm grateful now. If you had paid for Stanford, I might have followed the safe path. I might never have discovered my passion for entrepreneurship. I might never have built my company. Your rejection forced me to find my own way, and it turned out to be better than anything I could have planned. I turned to Jake. And if he refuses to support your dream, you'll find your path too. It will be harder than it should be, but you'll be free to pursue what matters to you. And I'll help you however I can. Not because you're competition or not competition, but because you're my brother, and you deserve a chance to build your own life. Diane stood up, hands fluttering nervously. Let's all calm down. We can discuss this rationally. There's no need for ultimatums. But my father's face had hardened into a mask I recognized all too well, the expression he wore when he had made up his mind and would not be moved. If you apply to those music schools, don't expect a penny from me, he told Jake, and don't come crying to me when you're playing in subway stations for spare change. Jake flinched but straightened his shoulders. I'll take my chances, he said. At least I'll be doing something I love. You've been a bad influence, my father said to me. I invited you here in good faith, and this is how you repay me, by turning my son against me. Jake made his own decision, I replied. I just showed him it's possible to succeed without your approval. That's not being a bad influence. That's being a good sister. I picked up my purse and turned to leave. At the dining room doorway, I paused and looked back at my father. You know what's ironic? You were so worried about me being competition for Jake. But in the end, we're not competing at all. We're supporting each other in a way you never did for either of us. As I walked to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Jake running to catch up. Can I come with you? He asked, slightly out of breath. I don't think I can stay there tonight. I looked at my brother, really my brother now, not just in blood but in solidarity, and nodded. Get in. We have a lot to talk about. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. My father stood in the doorway watching us leave. For the first time in my memory, he looked small. 3 years passed quickly. My company continued to grow, expanding our platform internationally and developing new tools to make education more accessible and affordable. We had offices in 3 cities now, with over 100 employees, and a valuation that had crossed the $50 million mark after our latest funding round. More meaningful than the financial success was the impact we were making. Our platform had helped thousands of students afford higher education, providing not just discounted textbooks, but also connecting them with scholarships, grants, and alternative funding sources. I had established a foundation that offered full scholarships to 10 students each year who had been cut off financially by their families. My way of turning personal pain into purpose. My personal life had flourished as well. I had met Michael at a tech conference where we were both speaking, he on sustainable energy solutions, me on educational technology. Our connection was immediate and deep, built on mutual respect and shared values. He was brilliantly intelligent, but also kind and grounded, with none of the ego that often came with success in our industry. After 18 months of dating, we were engaged, planning a small wedding focused on authenticity rather than show. Jake had forged his own path with remarkable determination. Against our father's predictions, he had been accepted to Berklee College of Music with a partial scholarship. I had helped with the remainder of his tuition, not as a handout, but as an investment in his talent. He had thrived there, his natural musical abilities honed by formal training and collaboration with other gifted students. Our relationship had grown into a true sibling bond, the kind I had always longed for as a child. We spoke weekly, visited when we could, and supported each other's dreams without reservation. The forced distance of our childhood had been replaced by a chosen closeness that enriched both our lives. Our father had maintained his position of disapproval for nearly a year after the confrontation dinner. Eventually, as both Jake and I continued to succeed on our own terms, his stance had softened somewhat. There were occasional phone calls, awkward holiday gatherings, tentative attempts at reconciliation. I remained polite but distant, accepting his overtures without depending on them. Jake was more open to rebuilding a relationship, but on new terms. Adult to adult, not child to authority figure. My wedding day arrived on a perfect June afternoon. We had chosen a small boutique hotel with a garden for the ceremony, intimate enough for our 80 guests to feel like part of a community rather than spectators. My mother, radiant in a blue dress that brought out her eyes, was my matron of honor. Dr. Martinez, the professor who had changed the course of my life, sat in the front row. As I prepared in the bridal suite, there was a knock at the door. My mother answered it, then turned to me with a questioning look. "It's your father," she said quietly. "He'd like to speak with you." I nodded, and she let him in before discreetly stepping out to give us privacy. My father stood awkwardly just inside the doorway, looking distinguished in his tuxedo, but uncharacteristically uncertain. "You look beautiful," he said after a moment. "Thank you," I replied, adjusting my simple but elegant gown. I had chosen it myself without input from bridesmaids or family, trusting my own taste rather than seeking approval. I wanted to ask. He cleared his throat. I know you've arranged for Jake to play during the ceremony, and I assume your mother will be walking you down the aisle. That was the plan, I confirmed. It's your day, and I'll respect whatever you decide, he continued. But I wanted to offer, if you'd like me to walk with you as well, I would be honored. I studied his face, searching for the pride and entitlement that had characterized so much of our relationship. Instead, I saw something new. Vulnerability, regret perhaps, even a genuine desire to make amends. Why? I asked simply. He seemed taken aback by the directness of the question. Because you're my daughter, he said finally. And despite everything, I love you. I haven't shown it well, or at all sometimes, but I do. And Jake, I pressed. He's performing an original composition at my wedding instead of attending an Ivy League business school. Are you proud of him too? My father's eyes dropped for a moment, then met mine again. I'm learning to be, he admitted. It's not the path I would have chosen for him, but he's happy and he's good at what he does. That counts for something. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was an honest one. And honesty, I had learned, was worth more than placating words or empty gestures. You can walk with Mom, I decided, one on each side, but understand this, I'm not doing it for your sake. I'm doing it because I don't want to carry anger or resentment with me into my new life. This isn't forgiveness, it's freedom. Relief and something like gratitude crossed his face. I understand, and thank you. As he turned to leave, I added, Dad, this doesn't fix everything. One gesture doesn't erase years of hurt. If you want a real relationship with me, with both of us, it will take time and consistent effort. He nodded solemnly. I know. I'm willing to try if you are. The ceremony was more moving than I had anticipated. Jake's music, a composition he had written specifically for the occasion, brought tears to many eyes. Walking down the aisle with my mother on one side and my father on the other felt symbolic. Not of traditional family unity, but of my ability to incorporate all parts of my past into a future of my own creation. Michael waited for me beneath an arch of white roses, his eyes shining with love and promise. As we exchanged vows, I looked out at the gathered guests. My chosen family of friends and colleagues alongside the complicated tapestry of my biological relations. Dr. Martinez beaming with mentor's pride. My mother radiating joy. My father sitting slightly apart watching with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Jake having moved from musician to guest, giving me an encouraging thumbs up from his seat. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of wholeness. Not because all wounds were healed or all relationships perfectly resolved, but because I had created a life rich with authentic connections and meaningful purpose. A life built on my own terms, shaped by my own choices, rather than by someone else's limitations or expectations. As Michael and I were pronounced husband and wife, I thought about the strange, painful gift my father had inadvertently given me when he refused to pay for Stanford. In trying to diminish me to protect Jake's future, he had instead forced me to discover my own strength. In seeing me as competition, he had pushed me to compete not against others, but against my own self-doubt and fear. Sometimes, the people who should believe in you the most are the ones who believe in you the least, but sometimes those who believe in you the least are the ones who accidentally set you free. As I look back on my journey from rejected daughter to successful entrepreneur, from someone defined by what was withheld from her to someone defined by what she has created, I see a path that was never straight, but always leading forward. Every obstacle, every disappointment, every closed door ultimately directed me toward a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one I had originally envisioned. When my father told me he wouldn't pay for my college education because I might be competition for my half-brother, it felt like the end of my dreams. I couldn't see then that it was actually the beginning of something much bigger. A life built entirely on my own terms, success that couldn't be attributed to anyone's generosity or influence, but my own. The scholarship foundation I established now helps dozens of students who find themselves in situations similar to mine, academically accomplished but financially cut off, often due to family dynamics beyond their control. Each time I meet these scholars, I'm reminded that our greatest wounds can become our most powerful purpose if we're brave enough to transform pain into action. Jake graduated from Berkeley with honors and is now touring with his band, building a respectable career in music. He calls me his biggest fan and best sister, titles I cherish more than any professional accolade. The relationship we've built as adults has healed some of the loneliness of our separate childhoods. We can't recover the years we lost, but we've created a bond that feels like it was always meant to be. My relationship with my father remains complicated. There are good days when I can appreciate his efforts to change to understand the people his children have become, rather than who he wanted us to be. There are harder days when old patterns emerge, and I must reinforce boundaries I've worked hard to establish. We will never have the simple, trusting relationship that might have been possible if he had supported me from the beginning. But we have something real now, imperfect, but honest. My mother, who worked extra shifts and sacrificed her own dreams to give me opportunities, is finally enjoying the retirement she deserves. The first thing I did when my company became profitable was to buy her a comfortable home and set up a trust fund to ensure she would never worry about money again. "You didn't have to do that," she told me when I gave her the keys. "I know," I replied. "That's why I wanted to." Dr. Martinez still teaches her entrepreneurship class, still challenges students to think beyond conventional paths. We meet for coffee once a month, and she never fails to push my thinking in new directions. "Your success doesn't surprise me," she often says. "But what you're doing with it, that's what makes me proud." As for Michael and I, we're expecting our first child in 3 months, a daughter we plan to name after my mother. When I think about the parent I want to be, I find myself reflecting on the lessons learned from both presence and absence, from support freely given and support painfully withheld. I want my daughter to know that she will always be enough, exactly as she is, that her worth isn't tied to achievements or comparisons, that she will never have to earn the love that should be her birthright. The irony isn't lost on me that my father's fear that I would be competition for his golden child led to the very independence and resilience that has defined my success. By trying to limit me, he inadvertently set me free. By underestimating me, he challenged me to prove my own worth, not to him, but to myself. Sometimes, the most powerful motivation comes from being told what you cannot do. Sometimes, the greatest gift is being forced to find your own way. Sometimes, the deepest wounds lead to the most profound healing, not just for yourself, but for others who will follow your path. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever been underestimated or overlooked by the people who should have believed in you most, I want you to know this. You are not defined by their limitations. Your worth is not determined by their recognition. The approval you seek from others is nothing compared to the satisfaction of proving your own capabilities to yourself. Have you ever been underestimated by family or had to forge your own path when support was withheld? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And if this story gave you any encouragement or perspective, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need reminding of their own strength and potential. Remember that sometimes being seen as competition is the greatest compliment. It means someone recognizes your power even if they're trying to diminish it. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to become everything those who underestimated you feared you might be.